Hi everybody, I'm Aaron and this is Ma, and today we're going to talk to you about what architecture and mobility might look like in the future. So earlier this year, we, along with Ellie Burkhead, worked on a project here at the Masters Department at Design Academy Eindhoven, in which we were proposing a speculative situation based on aging in 2050.
So to begin with, we ask ourselves two questions. First, how does 2050 look like, and what does it mean to age by then? So let's tackle the first question. There's a lot of information looking into the future and a lot of trend forecasting. We realized that in order to design a future scenario, we almost had to design the future itself. Among all this information, we would like to share with you some of the main aspects that we included in our project. First, in 2050, we're going to be 2 billion more humans inhabiting the planet, and most of us, we're going to be living in urban spaces. Second, most of us will be over 60 in Europe, and we will easily reach the age of 120. We will not retire according to our age, but to our cognitive ability, so we might actually live longer than we do now. Subscription-based services such as Uber or Airbnb will become the new normal, and we will not own things in the way we do now, but we will share our resources. Finally, autonomous transport, such as artificial intelligent drones, will be used to transport goods or even people.
So in a similar way that we designed this situation, we also thought we should design a character that would fit into this and kind of help us to think about aging, because our group was all 25 at the time, so for us to actually imagine what it's like to be old is kind of difficult. Now, as you can tell, neither of us are Dutch. I'm from Australia, Mari's from Spain, and Ellie was from England, so our cultural kind of idea of what it is to grow old was actually quite different. And we based our research kind of off our grandparents. So Ellie's grandparents lived in a semi-rural area in England. They're kind of growing older, but they're still mobile. Their age is affecting their mobility, and they're kind of affected by a lack of public transport in their area. Ma's grandmother lives in Spain. She lives in a medium-rise apartment in an urban setting, and she's being affected by stairs and things like that. And my grandmother lives in a very rural area in Australia, and her biggest fear at the moment are things like kangaroos and animals when she drives. Now, one of the things that kept coming up through our research and our interviews was this idea to retain your independence as you're aging. Everyone kind of was talking about the same thing, and there was this real problem with becoming reliant on your family or things like that. And this idea of as little change as possible really became the basis for our project. But as you do age, things do change, so we thought we would create the character. And so this is Louise. She is a 75-year-old lady. She lives in New Rotterdam, which is basically Rotterdam but in 2050. And she used to be an organ designer, but she used to be an architect, but now she designs organs for the human body. For us, Louise acted as a way to kind of think about the aging process, and she was a combination of all of the issues faced by our family and grandparents. So when we started to think about what mobility would mean for Louise in the future, we started to think about really kind of crazy ideas in things like hospital beds that came straight to your house, all the way up to things like VR experiences that would kind of mimic cruises and things like that to really kind of think about the idea of mobility. But what became important to us was that mobility meant for Louise this idea of independence. And so we went through and we kind of looked at how mobility and architecture combined, and we went through all of these sources, things that ranged from the nomadic city, from Archigram, all the way up to the Hyperloop from Elon Musk. And we tried to design a city and a scenario in which there'd be as much movement as possible.
So we would like to share with you some of the infrastructure that we developed for Louise in order to make her routine much better. We made we built this model in which we look at the places where she is, the vehicles that she uses, what kind of stuff that she carries, and we try to analyze her routine. We're especially interested in merging the spaces with the vehicles in order to increase her mobility. For example, how would it be if instead of driving to a general practitioner, a medical bot, an autonomous medical bot, would just come into your house and then do all the medical checking for you? Or how would it be if instead of having a set number of spaces and bedrooms in your house, you could, under a subscription-based services, rent more bedrooms, a bigger dining room for some special guests, and overall have a flexible possibilities of bedrooms and spaces. This idea of the house could also be expanded to other situations for Louise. For example, she's a freelancer, as we explained before, and she can actually call for different offices that can move around the city, and she can choose between different sizes and different locations. For us, the idea of merging architecture and mobility is our main concern. It is not a new idea, but for the first time we have the means and technology to make it possible. And we want to encourage, or we want to envision our future as this subscription-based service in which you can rent, extend, or exchange your spaces. And at the same time, this would mean that aging population would not be so dependent, and they could live with as little change as possible. Thank you very much.